Hi, and welcome. This is the Connected Teamwork podcast led by me, Olena Sergeeva, and Hylke Faber, who is, along with me, we're partners at Growth Leaders Network, and Carson V, Microsoft Director. The podcast is dedicated to connected teamwork, and this is our first episode. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what connected teamwork means to me and why we're doing here. And I guess I'll start with just a few words about myself. I am Ukrainian, and currently I live in the United States in Seattle. I've had a successful career as a senior executive working in Ukraine for a global company, and I have a lot of experience leading cross-cultural, cross-functional teams, a lot of practical experience that had both joys and challenges. I was also teaching in MBA programs courses on leadership, change management, organizational behavior, done a number of management development programs and leadership programs for um, businesses and nonprofits. And in my experience, teams matter so much in terms of reaching the goals, reaching the performance you want to reach, but also in terms of like joy, satisfaction you can experience every single day, because teams is something that you deal with every single day, both at your work and personally. So we want to be very, very practical in this podcast. So in each episode, and it's only 30-minute episode, we're gonna also demonstrate a specific practice that we will encourage you to apply to your teams, to apply and use, on a weekly basis. And let me just say a few words why I personally feel passionate about connectedness and teamwork. Um, Connectedness to me is happening like right here, right now. Do I feel connected to myself? So, first of all, it's how grounded am I? How interested am I in what I'm doing right now, right? Am I fully present? And if I'm not present, what's happening, right? What's happening with me? Where is I right now, right? So connectedness has one level is connecting to self. The other level is others, right? How connected I am to the others that are on the team. Like right now, I don't feel strongly connected because I don't see you. I don't hear those of you who might be listening to this podcast now or later. And if you are listening to it now, I would love to, hear your comments or questions or reactions. That would be great. Um, so when we are working on a team on any project or task, right, you could of course make sure you're connected to the others in a much simple way than being on the podcast alone right now, right? And the third element of connectedness is connecting to the task. How aligned you are with the goal, how aligned you are with the current task, how interested, motivated you are, what kind of knowledge you have that you're bringing in, and so on. So to actually focus on something practical today, we will be talking about how you can connect to your team members in any meeting that you're running. And of course, team meetings is something that's big portion of your teamwork is basically meetings, right? Whether it's online meeting or offline meeting, it really doesn't matter. What we believe that to start, thank you, Julia. Julia just made a comment that I look stunning. Thanks. Um, to start a meeting, you really need to focus on what kind of energy, what kind of energy you bringing and what kind of energy you want to have in a meeting. And if you want to have an energy of authentic connectedness, we want to invite you to try practice of checking in, which really created connectedness. And to do that check-in, I'm gonna invite in a moment my colleague here, Brandy Wasnak, to join me. And we will illustrate how we would start a meeting if it's just two of us using a very simple but also very, very powerful check-in technique. So Brandy, please join me here. Welcome.
Hello, Olena.
So
Thank
let
you.
me first, welcome, Brandy. Let me first go over the questions and explain which questions we're using for check-in, and then we'll actually do the check-in. So the three questions that we suggest using are, how are you feeling? Meaning, how are you arriving to the meeting, right? In what kind of state, what kind of, I don't know, thoughts or emotions you might be feeling. And of course, when we have a meeting, I don't elaborate right on this question. I'm just saying the first question is, how are you feeling? And we'll be taking turns responding. The second question is, how are you growing? Meaning, what's changing for you? What's the focus of your attention right now? What is one area that you see as your development area? What kind of, I know, transition you may be going through, right? That you're reflecting upon, right? So, and the third question is, what is your intention for the meeting? Sometimes I'm asking what would be a good outcome for you for this meeting, right? What's your agenda? What's your goal? So the three check-in questions are, how are you feeling? How are you growing? And what is your intention for the meeting? So we're gonna do it right now with Brandy, and we will focus on this podcast. So what's the intention for the podcast? Since both of us will be involved with running it. I guess I'll go first. So how am I feeling? I feel both very excited. This is the first episode of the new podcast, so of course I am excited. And also challenged. I was struggling with assembling bookshelves that arrived too late. And of course, there was a missing part there, so I couldn't really assemble it. And also challenged because this is the first podcast of a big series of connected teamwork, and it is in English, which, as much as I love it, still not my native language. How am I growing? Well, my growth area is really not to dive into stress when stressful things happen. Kind of return to being centered and grounded. And there are a lot of stressful things that happen in everyone's life. So, and of course, bookshelves that don't have a part to them is not the biggest stress you may experience. I have many friends and family members in Ukraine, for example. I live in a foreign country, and so on, right? So there are a bunch of stressful moments. So my growth is really in, how do I recognize that? How do I be aware? How am I balance between being aware of that and at the same time focusing on some productive goals, on what matters to me, what I'm passionate about, and do what I want to do. So that's the growth area. And my intention for this podcast is being of service, being useful to those of you who are working with the teams and want to try one or two or three new things and want to explore this topic for yourself. So one intention is being of service, and my second intention is basically just having fun with it. Enjoying it, having fun in the process. Hopefully, having some interaction happening through the podcast, having creativity and ideas that will stem from this. Was that I'm in our meeting with Brandy here that we're demonstrating.
Welcome, Olena. Thank you. I would say that I'm excited. This is like you said, the first podcast that we'll be doing on connected teamwork. Um, I'm also feeling spontaneous and put on the spot. Um, This session, I wasn't planning on attending in person live. And Olena, you came to me and asked ahead of time if I'd be willing to be on with you. And I threw caution to the wind and said, sure, let's go with it. So it's just one of those days that with the energy I have, totally up for the challenge. And here we are. Where am I growing? I am really working on taking time to pause in my day and practice mindfulness, and ensuring that I have a routine that includes exercise or moving my body daily. I know that when I employ these tactics and behaviors, it helps to calm an active mind. My mind gets going quite often. But it also helps me to focus the energy to a task at hand or to the things and the moments I have throughout each day, to be very present and deliberate while I'm in those moments. So movement and physical activity make a big difference for me. And I'm trying to make sure I'm doing that daily. My intention for this podcast is to bring best practices or tactics in which we can encourage others to explore and use in their daily lives. It's great for both your personal life in looking across the relationships and connections you have with others. But I do think it is also especially important at work, so that we can bring our best selves and our truth to the work at hand, but also to the partners that we engage with. And for that, I'm in.
Welcome, Brandy. Thank you, and thank you a lot for agreeing to help me with today's demonstration. And I want to take a moment to encourage everyone who might be listening right now or later to do exactly the same. Like, think right now about how are you feeling? How are you feeling this very moment? How are you growing? And what's your intention for this podcast, if you're going to be with us today and in the future? And what's your intention for the team, or the teams if you're working with multiple teams at the same time? And as you're thinking about this, I also want to encourage you to consider the benefit of this check-in. So what I'm asking you to do right now is sort of check in with yourself, right? There is nobody there. You're just doing it yourself for yourself, right? And to me, a huge impact that it does for me, it brings kind of brings me home, right? It makes me connect to my center, realizing, I feel very, in some moment, realizing I feel very stressed. I feel disconnected. I don't know what I'm doing, right? Why? What is it? What's happening, right? So that's already beginning of a change, right? Sometimes I do such check-ins the first thing I wake up. So I wake up and I ask myself, how am I feeling? And how am I going to be growing today? And what's my intention for today, for the day ahead, right? The value that these check-ins bring in terms of the meeting, the team, is that when everyone takes turns, and you just see two of us doing this, right? Obviously, when there are like 5 people, 6 people, it will take a little longer. But with practice, and when you do this every meeting, you're gonna learn to make it a little more succinct. So when you do it in the team environment, everyone is taking time to talk about how they are feeling, how they are growing, what's their intention for the meeting or for the project or for the week. Everyone has equal opportunity to be visible, to contribute, and also to present themselves as a human being. So to me, and I'm going to ask Brandy maybe also to share her um, ideas in terms of the use of it, right? To me, the most important use that we connect as humans, right? And that sets a very different tone for the meeting afterwards, a much more accepting and friendly and comfortable environment. That's what it does for me. What about you, Brandy?
Yeah, I agree. For me, first and foremost, you know how I was mentioned that activity helps to bring my mind into focus. It sets the stage going into the meeting of understanding where others are, but also giving an understanding of where I am, maybe for others to, you know, take in the tone of conversation, to take in a little bit of awareness to things that may be going on because it was shared up front in the check-in. But also it helps to bring me back to the intention of the meeting at hand. This, in our case today, Olena, as we're talking about the podcast, but you're typically giving awareness to where you are in the present moment, but then also sharing that you're acknowledging and therefore the intention of the meeting that you have. And it just helps to ground everybody to be on the same page. I also like it because I know in conversations or in meetings we've had, and these conversations open the meeting, it will often bring us to checking in with each other again afterwards, or following up on something that might have been said, that it continues to build the relationship and partnership that we have, like you say, at that human level, not always completely and totally focused on work. And that it feels good. It also helps us to just have an understanding in a different light that is beyond work.
Yeah, thank you, Brandy. And that also reminds me that I guess one of the strongest, the benefits is that you just get amazed and also very appreciative of everything that everyone has to deal with. There is so much, right? So how not to get overwhelmed by that, right? Well, first of all, if you do it regularly, it becomes a practice, and we learn to time yourself when you speak. So if you do it once in a year, well, people may be tempted to like, oh, really, talk for a long time, right? So the regularity is key to it, and um, you also, depending on the number of people, you may just do one question. You may choose one question, like how are you feeling, and just go around, or you just may choose intentions for the meeting and go around, right? You may choose two questions or three. Of course, you once you start practicing with that, you may want to get creative and start using different questions. um, However, what I would encourage you, these three questions are really grounding, because feeling allows us to connect to ourselves and learn where everyone is. Maybe someone is sad and someone might be frustrated and someone might be very excited and energetic, right? And that's okay. That's where we are. So feeling is an important element, and growing is an important element, because that focuses everyone on the important, hugely important element of our life, that whatever happens with us is helping us to grow, helping us to develop us, right? If we were really conscious of it and aware of that. And of course, intentions for the meeting, just as Brandy mentioned, help us focus and be present here and focus on the task at hand, focus on the goal at hand. So thank you, Brandy, once again. I want to do the following in the end, which we will do in every episode. The first thing is to just basically reiterate what is the weekly focus that we encourage you to pursue during this week. And for this week, we invite you to try the check-in, and try doing it just with yourself. Check in with yourself every now and then, maybe several times during the day, and also apply this checking to your team meetings, right? If it's one and the same team, obviously you don't need to do this 10 times during the day, but once per day or sometimes twice per day is important if you have several meetings with the same team, right? If you're meeting weekly or bi-weekly, then it's going to be, one check-in in that meeting. So that's our weekly connect challenge for you, is to apply the check-in and see how it goes, and hopefully share your comments or questions or feedback in our um, Connected Teamwork LinkedIn page. And the second thing that we would like to do towards the end is reflect a little bit on, when we start the meeting, we have the check-in. That's the beginning of the meeting, right? How do you end the meeting to sort of also connect towards the task and wrap up the meeting? Well, you could call it the checkout, right? Checkout. How do we do the checkout? So one way to do the checkout is to go around the room or around the Zoom or around the Teams and ask everyone, what are the most important takeaways for you today from this meeting. And of course, the bigger the meeting, the longer the meeting, the more impactful the meeting, the more significant this part is going to be. If you only have like 30-minute meeting, like we have today, our checkout is probably going to be shorter, right? Sometimes what we do is it's just 1 or 2 words checkout, right? If you don't have time and you have to run to another meeting, you do the checkout, but it's very, very brief, right? Like 1 word checkout. So we still have a little bit of time, so we're going to do a little more elaborate checkout, and I'm going to ask Brandy and myself as a meeting participant what are the takeaways from today for you, Brandy? What the outcome? What's the outcome of this podcast meeting for you?
Yeah, I'm going to say, if I put one word, I would say connection. Being in the moment and being able to connect with the participants that you're in the meeting with, this podcast in this case. But it also brings back the importance of that human to human contact. And it may not be in person. We're still very much in a hybrid work environment for the most part. So don't lose sight of the benefit to take pause, have the conversation that is inclusive of just general, how are you feeling? And then set forth the tone of the meeting through the intention of what you're there to do.
Okay. Thank you, Brandy. Okay. Okay, I'm thinking that I still need to reflect on what my takeaways are from this meeting. So I'm thinking about quite a few things, because podcast feels different from live teaching, for example, or seminar, corporate seminar on something, or workshop, where you facilitate and you have a group of people to interact with. So I need to reflect on that for myself, on those differences and how to make this as engaging as possible. That's my takeaway from this experience today. I also want to use a few minutes left at the end to just say what we intend to do in the next episodes. And basically, well, as you already discovered, it's me and Brandy here today, right? And in the next episodes, you're going to see Hylke Faber, our partner and CEO at Growth Leaders Network, and Carson V. We will also be having various interesting guests sharing their practices, their specific tools that help them to have connected teamwork. And that will happen. We will focus on defining moments that we consider are defining in terms of high-performing teams and connected teamwork. So what are some of the defining moments? And they may relate to how conflicts are handled, how feedback is given, or whether the feedback is given, and how feedback is received, and appreciation, recognition. What do we do to appreciate each other. Goal setting, aligning on the goals. So there are lots of interesting defining moments that we're going to be focusing in every single episode. And yeah, so basically to help us, kick it off in the most engaging way, we would really appreciate your thoughts, your ideas, your feedback, your suggestions on guests, and any practices and topics that you might be interested in. That would really be great. And I think with that, I'm out. So I think this one is going to be a little shorter than 30 minutes, which is, to those of you who might be watching it in time zone where it's already evening time, like Julia, who commented, you probably are appreciative of that. So we really thank you for being with us here today, and looking forward to seeing you, to talking to you in a week from now, next Monday.